I started gaming in the early 90s when I was really young. I think the first game I ever played on MS-DOS, it was either Captain Comic or Commander Keen. And the first fully narrative game that I ever played was an adventure game named Loom, in which, interestingly, you have to remember music in order to cast spells. So that was quite interesting. I've worked on video games before, but I never really had the opportunity to write a full score from start to finish for an entire game. I usually just wrote character themes or themes for a map, but usually there were multiple composers involved. So I was very happy when the audio team from Vertigo Games reached out, giving me the opportunity to become part of the Metro franchise and write a full score for an entire game. We started early discussions in, I want to say January, February 2023. They explained the audio engine to me, how it was working, how they were going to implement the music, what kinds of assets they were going to need. I remember Mark prepared this gigantic, it was over 100 pages, just an audio brief, which included music, but also sound effects and everything else. The entire audio landscape of the game. I've never seen anything like that. They don't do that in movies. I also started playing the old games from the Metro franchise. I started listening to the old music so that we could kind of create something new, but something that still felt like the Metro games, like the Metro universe, because we didn't want to alienate the old players that had played the original games. I think the whole process was around 1.5 years. I was actually encouraged to experiment, to really find the right thing, test it out in the game, go back, change it, which generally I have not experienced in any other medium.
I was so humbled to be invited by Anne, and I was really blown away when I found out what the project was that we were going to be working on. So I got to work right away, creating various presets so that Anne could use these to build this incredible score. So I was creating like darkscapes and textural pads and recording custom sounds and bending them out of shape so that she had some useful tools that we could use in the score of this incredible game.
Creatively, the first thing that we worked on was the main theme. The original games already have a main theme going on, so we wanted to kind of preserve that for the original players. We wanted to have the nostalgia factor, but at the same time we wanted to try new things with it, right? Expand on that, write variations, but make it feel like it belongs into the Metro universe. One of those variations is the song that you hear fairly early on in the game. We wanted to start with the main theme, but as a Russian song.
Anne sent me an instrumental track and asked for lyrics that were ambiguous about isolation, loneliness, old memories, and things that were lost, but with a touch of hope. She wanted something that would sound like a song people would remember from the old days before living underground. I thought about ways to make the melody feel more traditionally Russian while crafting the lyrics. My goal was to create something that people familiar with Slavic or Eastern European folk music would recognize with a sense of déjà vu. I wanted something authentic, like the songs everyone in Russia knows from their childhood that people would have in their DNA. Traditional Russian or Slavic folk singing is very open and wide and powerful, which I felt would suit the climax, especially since there was already a choir in Anne's instrumental. So I decided to start with a more neutral, rounder sound. That's a blend of different vocal styles, including folk and a little bit of classical, then switch to the fuller, more powerful folk style towards the climax. And I layered different vocal parts and harmonies to recreate that big choir effect typical of traditional Slavic folk songs. The lyrics have a number of words that bring back the memories of the old folk fairy tales and folk songs. Those lyrics, those words are used very intentionally, and in general they reflect a sense of longing and loss, the idea that the land you grew up in is no longer there. In the end, I try to capture the beauty of holding on to the memory of places and people you love even when they're gone.
The second variation on the main theme is the acoustic harp guitar version. Now, this was Mark's idea. He said, you know, the original theme is played by regular guitar. How about we get a harp guitar? Now, for the acoustic version, I found Muriel Anderson, a fantastic harp guitar player from Nashville. So I basically gave Muriel the sheet music, the MIDI mock-up, and told her, do with this what fits best to your instrument, because every harp guitar is different. We really want to feature the special sound, the special characteristics of the harp guitar.
The original harp guitars that were built right around the year 1900 with this extra resonating chamber that makes it sound so lovely, they were quite a bit bigger, and they had steel strings. And so I asked him if he could make it smaller, and as such, it's tuned a whole step higher than a regular guitar. So this is shorter, so all the frets are a little bit closer together on that. Instead of having 6 extra bass strings like most, I had Mike build me one with just one more on 7 bass strings. And so that I can play it in different keys, I asked him if there was a way he could do half-step tuners. So this is the first instrument that has had these half-step tuners on it, to my knowledge, of the harp guitars, the over-the-top half-step tuners. So that allows me to play more easily in different keys. For my second guitar, I also asked for the extra set of trebles. And these are tuned this side with tuning hammers from a piano or a auto harp. That'll work for that. And then on this side, it has fine tuners from a fiddle or a violin that you use to tune it more easily.
And then we also decided to make an electric version of this, for which we found Jamie in Canada. He has a fantastic YouTube channel, and Mark actually had referenced some of his performances, so I figured why not reach out to Jamie and ask if he wants to be part of this. And he said yes, thankfully, so we got his amazing performance, and he He really interpreted this fantastically and even added kind of a rock version on top of it.
This is a harp guitar, and the reason they call it that is because it has extra bass strings. And the bass strings are not only just like a bass guitar, they're open bass strings, so there's no frets on them. As you can see, there's no frets here. So we have just open strings ringing on top of the guitar. Now, this poses a lot of challenges because you actually have to mute the strings as you go from chord to chord, so you don't want all these bass strings to be ringing out. And you can also sort of create bass lines as well, but you got to be careful how much of the bass strings are ringing out through that. And it has so much potential for new ideas, and that's why I love playing the harp guitars, because it's always opening up new doors and new sounds for me. This guitar is very, very unique because it has designs that I've never seen before. The headstock is actually like no other. I've never seen any headstock like this before. And the neck is perfect for fingerstyle guitar because it's a little wider, a little thicker. And I find compared to other electric guitars, it plays perfectly for fingerstyle. We have rods holding the bass strings, and then we have the headstock, of the bass strings. And this guitar really pulled through to bring all the sounds that I wanted. Some ambient tones, and then I sort of went into a little bit more of a distorted sound as well. And this guitar was able to do it all.
Now this was the most involved part because we have 3 different parts that had to be structured in a very specific way. Now the stealth theme is for when you're sneaking around, trying to hide from people, trying not to get detected. And there are certain points in that piece where it starts to ramp up slowly and the tension gets higher. So there are multiple turnarounds where I'm adding elements to it, but it has to work forwards and backwards. If you get detected or almost detected and people start to investigate because they can hear you, then we switch over into the investigation theme. This theme is a little bit more intense, also has different layers to it that slowly build, and it also works forward and backward. Because if you don't get detected after a while, the music relaxes again and goes back into the stealth theme. The investigation theme is basically the in-between piece between the stealth and the battle. It contains elements from both sides so that it seamlessly can go from one into the other. Now, if you do get detected, then we get into the battle theme. So the investigation theme has to go into the outright battle theme, which also has certain points, but the battle theme is for the most part just intense throughout. The complicated thing about this was that it has to work in every direction, and it has to be possible to seamlessly go from one into the other piece, which was kind of a 1,000-piece puzzle. And then obviously you have the different loop points, so there were a lot of assets to provide, and then you also have transitions, and then you also have different layers that you provide. So it's a lot of moving parts that had to be thought through, and I think implementation-wise this also took the longest because so many scenarios have to be tested out. So this was definitely the most complicated thing to do. Something we added later was the singing pipes. Now you can actually hear me sing in this track. And the idea of this level is that you are walking through tunnels, but there are pipes. And so if you hold your head against the pipes, you can hear the singing. And the singing gets louder if you get into the right direction, louder and clearer. So that's kind of how that piece is constructed in a way. It's a bit creepy. Not gonna lie. And it's weird to hear myself in the game and to follow my own voice. But if you're playing the game, just follow my voice. The piece itself is based on a Russian lullaby, which again was Mark's idea. He kind of provided that piece and was like, what if we did something like this? Because kid's voice, a lullaby, and a music box in a sort of detuned way is always a bit creepy. The Slaver Station is where, as the name says, the slavers live. The creative idea here was to use a lot of metallic sounds. They are heavy on technology, on weapons. We wanted to use some chain sounds and just really went into that kind of industrial sounding landscape. Hellsmouth is where the cultists live. The cultists are kind of the opposite of the slavers. So here we didn't want to use any metal sounds at all. They're not industrial in that sense. They are kind of a religious cultish group and also cannibals, and they sacrifice people. So we wanted to stick mostly to sort of natural sounds, but kind of distort them in a way. Make them a bit ugly. Make natural sounds sound a bit unnatural. We also very much settled on adding chants to it, death whistles, and all kinds of tribal things. The Worm Priest is pretty much the guy who is leading the cultists.
So the goal with this theme was to make it as scary as possible. So we incorporated some dark, scary chanting, some low percussion, and we topped it off with some Aztec death whistle as well.
Now for this, someone at the Vertigo Games office wrote lyrics, and Mark asked me, do you think we can work that into this piece? They did this fun thing where at their office, they actually recorded the whole office chanting, and I just layered all of it together into this piece and cut it up, and it actually ended up in the final product. The catacombs are the space in between the slavers and cultists. This is kind of a dumping ground for dead bodies, and it's really creepy and weird. Something that we did do is we provided layers for these slavers, the metallic sounds, and then the specific sounds we use for the cultists on top of the track that is playing there, where I used a lot of didgeridoo and instruments from the Amazon and synthesizers and all kinds of stuff, and some whispers and chants already. Polyanka Station was one of the first pieces I wrote. I had a lot of fun with that one because that was the first one where I just got to experiment. It's a supernatural area, but a friendly one. So there are spirits and ghosts, but they're not evil. They're not trying to harm you. So it's much more of a mysterious thing. And I'm using very specific tonality to kind of give you that unsettling feeling, like something's not quite right, something spiritual is going on, something is there, but also nothing particularly dangerous, so you don't feel like you are in danger. Now, the supernatural theme is an outright horror theme. It's so many soundscapes, just crazy things, stingers and jump scares. It's basically your typical horror thing, and it's also one of those very long pieces just because I went crazy on it for a whole week or two, just expanding on that. I don't think I've ever written a piece that long that is just essentially soundscapes. One other section that took a while to work on is the trolley theme. There's one section in the game where you are in a trolley, and while you're on the trolley, you're being attacked, you have to defend yourself. So it's kind of an action sequence, and one of the few where we actually went a bit heroic.
Anne created a really great theme for this using a lot of railroad sounds and rhythms. And then from there, we just kept ratcheting up the action until the end. It was a lot of fun.
Something we added later was the spiders. You can turn them off in the game, so if you can't handle spiders, there is a setting to not have them. I created a specific layer that can pretty much go anywhere, and it's just all kinds of crawling, creepy sounds, many legs on a surface. Yana is one of the main characters. She has two themes. She has one hopeful theme and one melancholic theme where I borrowed a lot from Russian Romanticism. Another theme that we hear mostly at the end, but also a little bit throughout, is Khan's theme. Now, I'm not gonna get into why there is a theme called Khan and why there are Mongolian elements, because that would be a spoiler for the game. If you played the original games, you already know, but I'm not gonna spoil it for the rest. I hope I get to work on a lot more games because I really enjoyed this process, and at any given point it was very clear that everybody over at Vertigo Games just really loved making this game. I just really hope people enjoy it. I really hope people play through it and just really enjoy what we made here, because A lot of care went into it, a lot of thought went into it. A lot of people really tried their best to make existing fans happy, but also to get a new audience and introduce them to the Metro franchise and make them happy too.